Hello, wonderful students!
And welcome to the IELTS Grind. My name's Phil.
And I'm Michael.
So last time we were talking about some of the questions that our students always ask us. So if you're interested in seeing that, just check out the link in the description. But what are we talking about today, Michael?
Today we will be seeing how much you know about the IELTS exam itself.
Yeah, it's really important because if you go to the IELTS exam and you don't know anything about the test, you're going to have a very difficult day. So it's best to be as prepared as you can before you go in.
So let's just jump right into a little quiz to see how much you already know.
Yeah.
We are going to be asking you questions, long series of them, so please make sure you take out some paper and a pencil, or maybe just your phone to take some notes to write down the answers. We'll ask you all of the questions, and then we'll go back and talk about them together.
Yeah. So the first question is, how many different sections are there of the IELTS test, and in which order will you take them on the exam day?
Okay, and the next question is, by the way, all these following questions are going to be all about the listening section.
Yeah.
So here's the first one. How many questions are there? Second question. How long do you have to take the test? Third. How long do you really have to listen to all of the texts? Do you have time to copy your answers? Fifth question. How many texts or listenings are there? Next, what are the two topics of the various listenings? And finally, which ones are monologues?
Okay. So let's talk about reading now. So the first question is, how many questions are there, and how long do you have to complete those questions? The next question is, how many texts do you actually have to read? Okay. And the third question is, do you have time to copy your answers over to the answer sheet or not? Okay, the next question is, what are the most difficult questions in the reading?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we're going through this quite fast. If you need to pause to write down your answers, feel free. Our next section is the writing.
Oh, okay, the writing. Okay, I need to turn over my page for this one. Okay, so the questions we have for the writing. Again, how many questions are there? So how many tasks in the writing? How long do you have to complete those tasks? The third question is, how many words do you have to write minimum for each of those tasks? And how many different types of task one type questions are there? And the last question about writing is, how many types of essay questions exist for the second task? Okay,
so again, pause the video if you want to take some time to copy those answers down.
Yeah.
And unpause. Finally, we have the speaking. How long do you have in total for the speaking test? What's the range of times? Okay. What are the three sections? Which two sections are about you, the candidate or the speaker? And finally, which one is about more abstract topics where you need to develop your ideas more?
Okay. So make sure you write down your answers, and now we're going to tell you what we think the answers are.
What we know.
Yeah.
The answers are.
We know. We know. Okay. Right. So let's move on to that. So we started off with the first question, which was, how many different sections are there in the test overall, and in which order do they come?
If you're smart, you listened to our questions and figured it out.
I think we kind of go that way a little bit, didn't we? Okay. So Michael, what's the answer?
We have 4. There is listening, followed by reading, followed by writing, and then your speaking exam you can do on the same day or on a following day.
Yeah.
Now, this is actually really tough. This is one of the reasons why the IELTS exam is such a difficult test, is because it's an endurance test.
Yeah.
Right? It's a huge amount of English that you have to do over a long period of time. With my students, I always make them practice, if they're getting closer to the exam, they have to practice doing the listening and the reading at the same time for their homework. Like they have to do basically a whole test to prepare.
You should do at least, I would say, 2 to 3 within the running up maybe a week, 2 weeks before. You need to practice this in real time. It's no good turning up and doing it for the first time on exam day. That's really not going to be fun.
Unless you're a native speaker like us.
Yeah, it's true, yeah. Okay, so what was the next question we came? We were talking about listening as well.
Yep. And the first one was, let's see what you know.
Okay.
How many questions are there?
I think there's 40 questions.
He is correct.
Oh, that's good.
How long do you have?
Well, here's the thing. You're given 40 minutes in total, but 30 minutes of that is actually listening. You get 10 minutes to transfer your answers over, which sounds like a lot of time, but it is not, and you've got to be very accurate. You've got to make sure you copy the right answer to the right question in the right place.
And by the way, you will only be able to listen once to
Yeah.
all of the text.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
So
So you need to practice this.
Okay. Next, how many texts or listenings are there?
Well, there are 4 sections.
Okay. And what are the topics of these sections?
Well, the first one is what we call kind of transactional information. So it's normally going to be 2 speakers exchanging information.
Okay. And how about the other 2?
Well, so the next one, it's normally going to be a monologue, and it's going to be kind of a general topic, really. So it's one speaker talking about a general topic that should be fairly familiar to most people.
Okay. So those first 2 sections, so what he was talking about, transactional,
Yeah.
that is also, general conversation.
Yeah.
So the first 2 are definitely general, and then the next 2 are going to be academic.
Yeah.
So 1 and 2 are general topics, 3 and 4 are academic.
Yeah. And the distinction is how many people you're listening to, which I think was the next question, wasn't it?
Yeah. Which ones are monologues?
Yeah. So this is section 2 and section 4.
And what is a monologue?
Well, yes, good question.
Wait. I love to do this one with my students. I know I gave you this question, but I'm going to answer it.
Okay, go.
Okay. So my question to you is, monologue is probably a new word for you. Okay. First of all, let's see if you can spell it without looking in a dictionary. Don't look at your phone.
Yeah.
Okay. Monologue has how many syllables? Monologue. Okay. How do you spell mon?
Well, it depends if we're talking. Oh, are we in Kingston, Jamaica? Because it could be. Okay, bad joke.
So M-O-N, right? Mon, O. How do you spell O? O.
Oh.
And then log. Now this one's a bit tricky. It's not spelled L-O-G, okay? But there's another word that I know you know that is very similar to this one. Do you know the word dialogue? Of course you do. What is a dialogue? Two people speaking,
Yeah.
right? Okay? Monologue and dialogue, they're about the same thing. Dialogue means 2 or more people speaking, and monologue means
Well, just one person.
exactly. Okay. And that gives us the answer. That's a monologue. Okay. So those were all of the listening
Okay.
questions.
So let's go on to the reading questions. So the first question was, how many questions are there, and how long do you actually have to answer those questions?
Sorry, for the reading section, yeah.
The reading section.
And
So how many questions are there? Michael, how many questions are there?
oh no, I failed the test.
How long do you have to answer those questions?
We've got 40 questions, just
Okay.
like the listening, and you have 1 hour
Yeah,
to
it's
do
only-
all of them.
yeah, only
60
one.
minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
And you don't have time to transfer your answers. So when you're doing the reading test, make sure that you are writing down immediately.
Yeah, so that was the next question. Do you have time? That's 60 minutes.
See, I'm good at test taking. I can answer the questions before they're asked.
Okay, so we said we've got 40 questions, but how many texts exactly do you have to read?
There are 3.
There are only 3. Well, I say only 3. There's still quite a lot to do in an hour. So 3 texts. Now, we were talking about something that a lot of teachers tell you. So if you divide 60 minutes by 3, it gives you 20, right? Should you
20,
spend 20 minutes on each text?
I actually tell my students not to do this.
And I thought that was good advice.
Because, you see, a lot of people say that the tests get more difficult over time. Actually, the first 2 texts are about the same level, and then the third text is a lot more difficult than the previous 2. And because of that, I recommend my students, when they're practicing, that they aim for 15 minutes for the first reading, 20 minutes for the second, and then 25 for the third.
Good count now. Yeah.
Math.
Yeah.
My bane.
That's why we're English teachers, right? Okay, and the last question was, what are the most difficult question types on the reading? Now, what would you say? Because I think we differ in this.
So, I have found that my students hate matching heading the most, because you need to understand the whole the whole paragraph, and then the distractors are usually brutal. They're usually very, very difficult. Following that is usually yes, no, not given, and then true, false, not given, mainly because a lot of students have trouble seeing what's the difference between false or no and not given. So a lot of them are really tricked up by that.
Yeah.
However, you disagree.
I disagree. I mean, maybe this is just me, but I think that the worst questions are those that you have to actually take out the words from the text. So it's things like summary completions, where you're looking for up to 3 words and you're taking it from the text and putting it into that summary, or sentence, short answers to questions, I should say. So again, it's extracting information from the text. Now, the reason I think that's more difficult is because the answer isn't on the page for you, in the questions. And for the true, false, not given, for those heading, I have a really good technique. And I teach my students something, which I will cover in another video, so I'm going to link to that down in the description.
And likewise, I have some tips and tricks for the summary completion that he was talking about. I have some guaranteed tricks that you can follow that will make that much easier, because the answer is always going to be exactly from the text. You can find the exact word in the text to put into the answer, which I think makes it easier.
I think that's why we're such a good team. Cover all the bases.
Yes.
Okay, so what were we talking about next? We went on to writing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question was, how many different questions are there?
There are 2 types of tasks.
Definitely, yeah.
Tricky question.
Yeah. Okay, so how long do you have to do those 2 tasks?
So this is also a tricky question, because you have 1 hour to do the 2 tasks, but then you need to divide this up into 20 minutes and 40 minutes. The reason why you do this is because task 1 is worth 1/2, 1/3, so task 2 is worth double task 1.
That's it, yeah.
Okay. And so you should obviously be spending more time on task 2. Okay. Task 2 is also a longer one. You need 250 words for that, while task 1 is only 150.
Yeah. And that was the answer to the next question. How many words?
I'm so good at this.
So,
and actually, there's one more thing about timing. So when I say 20 minutes for task 1 and 40 minutes for task 2, you need to realize that this is not all writing time. Okay?
Yeah.
You will need to plan and proofread, which usually takes an additional 3 to 5 minutes that you need to take away from that. So you really only have about 12 to 15 minutes to write task 1, and really only 30 to 35 to write task 2.
And I always tell my students that there's nothing worse when you're writing an essay than having a good idea. Because if you have a good idea and you change your plan, it's going to really mess up the cohesion of your essay. So make sure you plan and you stick to your plan. That's going to give you the best chance for success, I would say.
And of course, if you look around, you will find a link to our videos about the writing.
The writing tasks, yeah. So we'll link to those, and there'll be links in the description. Okay, so I just want to take this moment to say that if you've enjoyed the video so far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and if you hit that notification bell, you're going to get an alert every time that we put out a new video. So thanks very much for that. And let's move on to the next question. So, how many different types of Task 1 questions are there?
That's a really tricky question, because there are many.
There
are many. I'm going to list just a few.
Yeah.
So you have changeover time. There are a couple under this category. We've got changeover time with the line graph. We've got changeover time with maps, where you have to describe the changes to an area. We've also have pie charts, where you're going to be just comparing different proportions.
Yeah.
We've also got describing a process and describing a diagram, where there's usually going to be a picture, a series of pictures, and you're going to have to describe what you see.
So there are lots of different types, and you're going to have to take a slightly different approach to each of them. But this is just going through sort of learning how to approach each task. And we're going to have lots of videos about that. So if you subscribe to the channel, you're going to get all the information you need about that.
Just for you.
Just for you, yeah. Okay, and I think the last question we had about writing was, how many types of essay questions are there? So we're talking about categories here of essay questions.
For test 2.
For task 2, yeah.
Oh, okay, see, I'm psychic. So test 2 is, so there's many different kinds of essays. So there's opinion essays, there's 2 sides plus opinion essays, there's advantage and disadvantage, problem solution, cause solution, effect solution. There are some questions where you just need to be answering a question. Those are comparatively rare. And they all have different structures.
If you condense them down, how many basic structures would you say?
I don't know, how many would you say?
Well, I always, definitely the opinion essays we set apart, because it's a very different structure. And then the both sides an opinion essay. This is the classic kind of essay you probably learn if you've gone to university. It's a very sort of balanced essay, I would say.
Which is different from the opinion essay.
Yeah.
I know that they have the same word in their names.
Very different,
but
very different.
They don't have the same structure at all, and you don't use the same vocabulary.
Yeah. And then I would say all those others that you've listed, they do have their little nuances and they change slightly. But I generally group them into one type, and I call that 2-question essay type. Because you've got to answer 2 things, basically. But they are slightly different, and you can approach them a different way. But I would generally say there are 3 main structures when we're talking about how you structure an essay.
And by the way, if this is the only video that you watch, I do want you guys to walk away with this. Task 1, and we're probably going to cover Phil's head over here.
Yeah.
Okay. Task 1, the basic structure, your first sentence is going to be your intro, only 1 sentence paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
Your next paragraph is going to be your overview, 1 to 2 sentences. This can also be at the end, but to be on the safe side, I always recommend it to be your second paragraph.
Makes a lot more sense in the introduction. The big picture.
Exactly. And you don't forget it. If you forget it, the highest score you'll get on task achievement is a 5.
Yeah.
Next up is your body 1, and then your body 2, and there are no conclusions. In task 1, as you see in Phil's head, there is no I, so you should never say I or your opinion.
Yeah.
There's no why, you're never going to say a reason, you just describe what you see, and there are no conclusions. These are the 3 things you need to remember for task 1. Okay?
Yeah.
Task 2 structure is also pretty easy. Your first paragraph is going to be 2 to 3 sentences, and it's your intro.
Yeah.
Your last sentence in your intro is your thesis. We'll get into that in another video. Following that is body 1, and then body 2, and then your conclusion.
But remember, your last paragraph is not your conclusion unless you tell the examiner that it's your conclusion. So what I mean by that is you've got to write something like, in conclusion.
To conclude.
Yeah, you've got to signal the examiner. Now, I always tell my students that the examiner is a very lonely person in a dark room who doesn't know anything. They're very stupid. So unless you tell the examiner exactly what you're going to do and exactly what part of the essay you're at, they won't know. So make sure you make it very clear.
I say the same thing.
Yeah.
I say all English readers are stupid. We'll get into that when we go into writing.
Yeah.
But
okay, so I think that's good advice there.
Yeah.
Okay, so
now we're going to jump into the speaking.
Yeah.
Okay. So, first question, are you ready?
I'm ready.
How long do you have in total? What's the range?
Well, ideally you want to have about 14 minutes, but it can be as short as 11. However, if you're walking out after 11 minutes, you may have done something not so well.
Okay, next one. What are the 3 sections?
So we've got part 1, part 2, and part 3. So part 1 and part 2 are all about you. And part 3, these are kind of questions you probably never thought about before, a little bit abstract, we might say. Yeah.
Why do we even ask these questions?
Is that all of them?
Yeah, we're finished.
Sorry. So hopefully you've got all of those answers correct and you're well prepared for your IELTS exam. If you got a few of those answers wrong, then just go over and review each section. What are you going to be faced with? If you do that, you're going to feel a lot less anxious on exam day, and you're going to fly through and be very successful.
And this stuff is pretty easy to pick up.
Yeah.
Like, you will get it. Okay. And
cool. So, Thanks very much for watching.
You guys were fantastic.
So, if you're not a subscriber yet, do subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. And if you have any questions, tell us which of those answers you got right. Did you get any of them wrong? Leave us a comment and we'll get back to you.
And of course, if you have any more questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section and we'll probably get back to you.
Yeah. So thanks very much for watching and we'll see you next time.
Peace.